Shift happens, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance. And when it does, you have two options. You can either cling to the life you've outgrown or step into the version of you that knows she's meant for more. I'm Gialacqua, trauma-informed empowerment coach and founder of Radical Prioritization. Welcome to What the Shift, the podcast for women who've outgrown the life they've built and are ready to create one that finally fits. Here we get real about the shifts that change everything: identity shifts, career pivots, relationship resets, mindset breakthroughs, and learning how to finally release what's holding you back. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just be ready for what's next. It's time to shift. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in a life that no longer fits, you're in the right place. I'm Gialacqua, and this is What the Shift, where we get real about the shifts that change, challenge, and empower. I am so excited to introduce you to Becca Powers. Becca is an international keynote speaker, a USA Today bestselling author, and a Fortune 500 sales executive. With over 20 years of experience, Becca has spoken at companies like Cisco, Dell, and Royal Caribbean. Through her books, podcasts, The Empowered Half Hour, and her proprietary framework, The Power Method, she empowers individuals to break free from burnout, reignite passion, and live boldly at their highest potential. Creator of the Dragonfly Effect, Becca leads a transformational movement inspiring high performers to chase their dreams with such passion and purpose that it inspires others to chase theirs too, creating a ripple of positive impact. Becca, so happy to have you join us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here too. The bio always gets me to start dancing. I'm like, whoa.
There's a lot of amazing stuff in there, and I think there's a ton of synergy in the work that we do. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, me too.
So before we jump in, just tell our listeners a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to where you are today.
So, talking to you before we hit record, I really want to share a story because I think it's going to relate to the audience a lot. I'm a mom of 4 now adult children.
Wow.
My husband and I raised a blended family we've been together 15 years. My kids were 5 and 7 when we met. His were 5 and 7. So we became like Brady Bunch.
Love that.
And there was a moment in time, if you rewind in my life about 8-10 years ago, where all the kids were like middle school age. I'm working as a senior leader in an organization, and I have high sales goals. I've got a team. I've got a team at home. I've got 4 kids in middle school, the husband, the dog, the house, everything, the sports, the school, plate, like Thanksgiving plate full, And I remember I had 4 back-to-back bad days, right? Just bad work day. They were long 12-hour days. I was burnt out. I'm running on empty. I come home on that 4th day and I am just I'm sure people in the audience can relate to this. I am just trying to pull myself together, Gia. I'm putting the purse on. I'm I can do it. I can go in the house and I can be a happy mom. I can do it.
Pep talk, right?
Yeah, I can do this. And I walk in the door and the 4 kids were there, but they were instantly Mom, I need you to sign this, Mom. And I lost my cool. It's not my most proud moment, but I was like, can I put my effing purse down? And then I said some other things. And I just remember, them. It was it was a blessing moment in hindsight, because time slowed down for the first time for me in a long time. And I saw the way they reacted to my unleashing of anger. And it broke my heart. And it was one of those moments as a mom that I was who am I becoming? This is not, and I still tear just even talking to you. And this was 10 years ago, who am I becoming? Is this the mom I want to be? It made me think, is this the wife I want to be, the leader? And then that night when I went to go put the kids down to bed, I came and looked at myself in the mirror, and I swear I could not recognize the woman looking back. And tears just started coming down my face. And I was like, how did I get here? And I get the goosebumps talking to you. I'm like, how? On the outside, I look like this powerhouse of a woman. I've got the career, the dog, the kids, the fence, the everything, And then before you know it, I'm on the bathroom floor. I had full emotional collapse, crying on the bathroom floor. And in my most powerless moment, a miracle happened. So I'm like laying there on the floor, and I call out to God, universe, I can't do tomorrow the same way I'm doing today. And I only know how to do tomorrow the same way I'm doing today. And long story short, I got an instant, like I call it my instant miracle. From within, I heard a voice say, like, Becca, you're the CEO of your life. And so I kind of had like one of those comical moments, Gia, where like I'm crying, but also now laughing, like on the bathroom floor. I'm like, well, if I'm the CEO of my life, then what am I doing on the bathroom floor? I have a lot more power than I think I do. And I rose off the bathroom floor a different woman than the one that went down. And I kind of vowed to God, universe, that if I was able to save myself and get myself back on track, no matter how long it took, then I would dedicate myself to this work. And so here I am.
You gave me goosebumps and brought tears to my eyes in telling your story. So thank you for your vulnerability and being
You're
so
welcome.
open and sharing that story, because it's so relatable. It's a beautiful story, and it's so relatable because I think so many women can relate to so many facets of what you just said.
Yeah.
So, I think part of what you said is that, we have that moment where it's sort of a breaking point for us and we don't even recognize who we are anymore, who we've become. We've lost our identity because we're so tied up in the roles and responsibilities and the doing and the going and the
Yes.
people pleasing, right? That we stop and sometimes we look around and say, well, who are we at our core? We lose
100%.
sight of that, right? So, and I appreciate, the fact that we have those meltdown moments with our kids when we're so overwhelmed and overstimulated and we have so much going on and no time to ourselves. We all have those moments, right? But I think to your point, it's what you do after that.
Exactly. Exactly. And, just, for the listeners too, if you're relating, I also just want you to know you are 10 times more powerful than you ever like know that you are, unless you've tapped into it and you're like, oh yeah, I know. But if you haven't yet, I just want you to know that you are.
Absolutely. And it's a good point about how you show up, right? How you show up in those different roles for myself, for as a spouse, as a mom, as a leader, who am I in those moments? And I think redefining who you are at your core helps you to show up, in the
100%.
best way possible. You mentioned the emotion that was coming up was anger for you. You were angry in that moment. And I think that's makes a lot of sense. Again, very relatable. But I'm sure there was multiple layers of things underneath that. I know a lot of women I talk to, it's resentment, there's a little bit of sadness, but it all gets sort of suppressed.
100%. So, like, if we peeled the onion back on that, there was so much going on that now, as like a coach and an expert kind of in this field, like I know what was going on, but I sure damn didn't then.
At the time.
And some of the things that were going on is, well, one, I was working in a toxic work culture who applauded overworking, overdrive. All I call them the overs, but like all
Yep.
of the overs,
Yep.
right? And nothing was ever like good enough. So that triggered that part of me that was unhealed from my childhood of not being good enough. So I'm over compensating, trying to put in extra hours, show that I'm worthy, show that I'm valuable, get the gold star, and it was exhausting. And not only that, but I think that when you are, there's different seasons of life, but when you're raising kids, and you're a mom and you're not really taught boundaries or self-care, there's an overextension and overgiving that happens. And so that was happening too. And then my husband still wants some of my time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I just work 12 hours and the kids need everything.
There's no capacity.
Yeah. And so yeah, it just led to, I didn't, and again, in hindsight, I know that I was not on the priority list. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of some of the stuff that led up to me crying on the bathroom floor.
Which led you to your purpose.
Yes, which then led me to my purpose.
Which,
High five.
which is something so beautiful
Yeah.
and that I can relate to as well. My burnout moment in 2018. I was having heart palpitations on a plane, traveling for business, came home, found myself on the kitchen floor, also completely depleted. So my experience is the kitchen floor, yours was the bathroom floor. But, as all the thoughts are swirling in my head, health scare, what's going on? Who am I? How am I going to break this cycle? I want to come back to that because I think that's another
Yeah,
important point.
that's cool.
Um, but then the other side of me was saying, well, what the hell am I going to make for dinner?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
I don't have time for this. I don't have time to break down because it's 6:30 and I have to make dinner. So it's so interesting, those moments and how they shape us. But going back to that cycle, I think so many of us as high achieving women get stuck in that cycle of I've been successful doing the things I'm doing. And then you finally hit a point where you're like, this is not working for me. It worked
Correct.
really well for everyone else. And my over functioning has served everybody. And it has served me up until this point. But then you hit that breaking point where you're like, this is no longer working for me, but you don't know any different.
That's right. And, I think that you bring up a point that I kind of want to go off of is that I think a lot of this happens, accidentally. As I've worked with women and stuff too, they start bringing in the guilt, like, how did I get here? And like, well, let me just rephrase this. Like, especially if you're on the high achieving side, you're successful, right? And some of these skills might have been built off of prior survival and blah, 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 blah. But what I am trying to say is most high achieving women want to serve. They want to serve themselves. They want to serve their family. Like there is really good intention with the overdrive that happens. So I would just say, like, give yourself some grace. It's not like you screwed up. I mean, I gave myself all those thoughts too, but I was like, you know what? Like, hey, I might have hit the bathroom floor, but my kids are fed. We have a roof over our heads, So anyway, I just wanted to kind of bounce off that for a second.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's right. A lot of the things that have made us successful, are very valuable, and it's hard to let go of those because you look at them and say, well, this has brought me to where I am. And then it's hard to kind of pivot away from that, right? And nobody's saying you have to just drop all those things and start over, but it's how do we pivot? How do we shift,
Correct.
into a different sort of framework. So you and I are both trauma informed coaches, which I love.
I know, me
And
too.
in the work that you do, I would love to just get a sense for how you see trauma playing out in the women that you work with, both on a personal level as well as I know you do a lot of work with organizations from a
Yes.
leadership perspective as well.
So I came up with like my own framework because again, like as you start to study this stuff, it's very rooted in psychology and neuroscience and very academic at times. And there's big words and big theories. And I'm just like, okay, I just want to talk to like the everyday person.
Yeah,
So
simplify
I
it.
created some of my own words, but I call them the overs, the unders, and the uns. So typically, when I see someone, and even as a leader now, because I'm still in an organization, when I see someone overcompensating, I've got my eye on them. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are you overworking? Why are you overthinking, overanalyzing, overwhelming? Like I call them the overs. Like, why are you overdoing it? What's happening? And in the past, I would think, oh, well, that person's just really dedicated or
Ambitious.
ambitious or something like that, right? And especially women, we see it a lot in women, the overcompensating. So I call it the overs. And I know now that the overs are a trigger or a trauma response. And so if you go back, okay, I'm overing what's really happening. And you're like, oh crap, I feel undervalued, underappreciated, underrecognized. So I call them the unders. I'm like, if you're overing, you're overcompensating for something. And so do you feel undervalued, underrecognized, underappreciated? And are you trying to prove your worth or like, what's the overcompensation that you're trying to do? And then I go down one more layer and I'm like, oh, what's really happening? You feel unseen, unheard, unloved, unimportant. Is it at work? Is it at home? Like, we just unpack it. And, as when you learn this as a specialty, it always goes back to like childhood or some traumatic event. And so you could be in a little t trauma, like at work, someone gets promoted and you went for the promotion, this, and someone else did too. They got promoted, you didn't. And now you're in the overs, you're feeling the unders, it's the uns. But what really happened is that you were overlooked as a kid, and it's triggering all that stuff. So that's kind of how I relate trauma to the workplace. I look for the overs as a leader or as a coach, depending what hat I'm wearing, and then trying to peel it back to find out what's really going on.
I think that's so powerful. And that work is, as I said before, we started recording to you, it's so needed. Because I
It
think
is.
it's very undervalued and underappreciated and not really understood in the workplace.
Yes.
And some of it historically, in fairness, has been sort of taboo to talk about, or you don't bring your personal life into the workplace. But as we all know in coaching, you're coaching the person holistically. There
Right.
is no, this is who you are here and this is who you are there. No, I mean, you are one person. And so you bring all those experiences with you. And so the over indexing, I think, is really interesting because we see it all the time. And we do chalk it up to, wow, she's really ambitious. She's really goal oriented. She's a
Superstar.
superstar, go getter. And you're applauded for it.
Yes. And then yes, and that's why it keeps women, listen, this is why it keeps you in overdrive, because then you get told you're a good girl and you're like, I'm going to keep going. And then you're like us and you hit a floor and it's not good.
100%. And it's like, why do we have to get to that point?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so those experiences that, you touched upon that we bring into our lives from childhood obviously impact, in the work I do. I see it, of course, it shows up as a leader in your workplace. It shows up how you parent. It shows up
All the time.
as a partner or a spouse in your relationship. And to your point, in those moments when you're triggered, it's not really about what's happening in that moment, right? It's
Hmm.
triggering something else deeper inside of you. And that's scary to start to peel back those layers. But it's really important to get to the core of what that is, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It's life changing. I mean, if you look at it, I always, I mean, I'm a geek. I love personal growth work. So I'm like, let's get to it. Like, you're going to unlock your best. Let's go. But there, kidding aside, it really is like, the shadow lets in the light, you know, and if you can have the strength and the courage to take a peek, it's not going to be as bad as you think it is, especially if you're working with someone who is specialized or has awareness. As coaches, we're always moving people forward. When I'm starting to do trauma stuff, if I'm hitting on something, I'm like, okay, you need to see a therapist or some other tool to go back and work that. But the thing is when you're trauma informed, our goal is to help you have awareness, because self-awareness creates change. If you don't have awareness, you can't change. So we want to help give you awareness to what's really going on, not so that you get stuck in it, but you could be like, oh, that's from when I was 7 and I'm 37. Like, why am I letting that control my life, and all my decisions subconsciously? No, let's do
Super.
some
Yep.
reprogramming.
A total aha moment for so many of us, right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we recognize that. And I think part of the challenge is we have a lot of us that hyper independence. We've been applauded for doing it all, doing it well, being that superstar, your super mom, superwoman, right? I throw up every time I hear somebody say that. And it's like, well, it's hard to see those things when you're in it, when you're so entrenched
It is.
and it's your own mindset. That's where coaching, therapy, having an outside person who can help you, to your point, identify and become more aware of those patterns and get curious, start asking those questions, can be incredibly impactful.
Like I said, it's life changing if you're willing to do the
To do
exploration.
the work.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So, and I love what you said about the shadow lets in the light. I think that is just incredibly profound and such an eye-opening moment. Like when you realize that, I feel like for me, there was parts of myself that I had suppressed, buried, didn't want anyone to see, didn't want to recognize myself, right? But exactly what you just said, when you bring them to light,
oh, you're giving me the
when
goosebumps.
you integrate them, when you address them, when you see them, it gives you back that power. High five.
That's like a mic drop right there. I had the
Oh, I
goosebumps like
love
head to
it.
toe.
It's true. It is true because for so long we can run, right? We try to run and hide it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, if this is not working, what needs to change?
And like as you say that, I like remember even going back to my scenario, like all I wanted really, I think I was just really searching like external approval.
Yeah,
Um
validation.
and the validation, yeah. And not because like I mean, yeah, I had people pleasing tendencies, blah blah blah. We all do until we do our work. But I think it really just came from growing up. You're just trying, am I going in the right direction? Like, can someone please tell me I'm doing a good job, you know? And, but then when I really started doing the self exploration, I realized, wow, I need to give myself my own approval. You know, when you start shifting from the external to the internal, like you're kind of alluding to, that's like where your power starts to come.
Absolutely. And that is, I think to your point, part of it is just conditioning, societal conditioning, growing up in school, being in a family, you are sort of getting that feedback on an ongoing basis of, hey, you're doing a good job or you're not. Right?
Yes.
And then when you become an adult, where are you getting that from?
Yeah, exactly. Like anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Right.
Tell me I'm doing good.
You're waiting for that acknowledgement and that sign and that validation. So it's not totally uncommon, right? I think it is sort of how what we've become accustomed to. And then, but you have to learn to shift to your point from being that external validation to the internal validation,
Yeah.
which is again a game changer. So based on your experiences, Becca, I would love, if you could share kind of what was the biggest shift that you made for yourself when you were in those moments that helped you to come out the other side.
I would say I always love to start practical. I mean, there's big things. Yes, I do meditate. I have really good spiritual, part of the disconnection is, I think, a spiritual disconnection. So I always say, like, take time to explore yourself. It doesn't mean religiously, but just who are you? Have a connection with that deeper side of yourself. With that said, the very first step, Gia, was some freaking boundaries.
Mm,
Like that, yeah, I realized I had none. And so I accidentally started putting in boundaries because of necessity. Like how you said, like you're facing some health stuff. Like I was too. I think when by the time you hit the bathroom floor, there's some health scares, right? And so I was no longer in a place where I could continue saying yes to things. And even though some of my yeses were from people pleasing, a lot of my yeses is because I'm a very optimistic and positive person. Like I love exploration. Like I want to see what's behind the door. So if I get an opportunity to run a project or do something, I'm like, yeah. But before I knew it, I was saying yes here, yes here, yes here, yes here. And I had so many things on my plate that in addition to all the other things I just mentioned, I had all these responsibilities. And I had gotten asked the next day to run another project because I was a senior leader. And I was like, I can't. Like inside my narrative is like, I can't. Like I just hit the bathroom floor last night. I if I put one more thing in my plate, I'm going to end up in the hospital, which was very true. I was
yep,
very sick and very weak by that point.
yep.
And so I remember shaking because I was in a leadership meeting and I had to say no. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to get fired? Like, I literally thought I was going to get fired. And so I'm like shaking and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, my plate is super full. And then, like, being quick on my feet, I was like, oh, but maybe this junior leader would be a good fit for it. Blah, blah, blah. She's been trying to raise. And the most incredible thing happened. They were like, okay, cool. We'll have her do it. And they went to the next agenda topic. And then it was in that moment that I realized that the narrative was all in my head and that all this crazy stuff that was going on, I had a lot more control over. So I say it jokingly, but like it is easier to put in boundaries than you may think.
Yeah, and the world's not going to fall apart.
We think it
even
is.
even though we think it is. But yeah, and I think, the other thing is it's sort of like this visceral reaction that we have to certain concepts. Sometimes it's certain words, right? So
Mm.
even just hearing the word boundaries, some women have like
Ooh.
a reaction to that. Or I know for me, I don't love the word self-care. I think there's also a lot of like baggage
Fluff
that
around
comes
it.
with it, but I know a lot of other women who feel like self-care is not for me, or the word rest, right?
Ooh, oh yeah, you tell a woman to rest. She's like,
Uh,
no.
Me, I don't need rest. And that was me for a very long time. And so the words that we use and the meaning that we attribute to them and those concepts can hold a lot of power over us. And,
100%.
if you're feeling that sort of reaction to something, I would encourage our listeners to get curious with it.
I love that because, yeah, the curiosity will lead you a long way.
Yeah. Because, we're already annoyed and on to the next thing. So tell us, Becca, a little bit. I know last year, very recently, you published a book. It's called Return to Radiance. Tell us a little bit about the book, what it's about, and what inspired you to write it.
Well, what inspired me to write it was kind of, you'll get a giggle out of this because you understand, but one of the things that inspired me to write it was that I was doing a lot of trauma certifications and stuff. And I had already had my Kundalini Yoga certification. And in Kundalini Yoga, we meditate on our radiance and our potential. And then by doing so, you start breaking through some of your traumas and your past, and you have all these breakthroughs, and it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful practice. But when I was doing all my certifications, I started meditating on my trauma, on releasing my trauma, on releasing my stress, and just that intention brought me back into a very low, and like all my autoimmune, because I got autoimmune disease from, so all my, even though I was still testing negative, I was flaring up all over the place. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like all this work is really beautiful, but there's a side to this work where people sometimes will keep you in your trauma, and like there's a business in burnout and trauma and shadow, right? And so I was like, although I specialize in this, I want people to return to the radiance. I want to guide them to being like the brightest, best version of themselves. And so the book is a collection of how I approach that process.
I love that. I think that's incredibly powerful and beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it sounds like something we could all benefit from. I love that. So what's one thing, just before we wrap up, Becca, that you want our listeners to walk away with after listening to today's episode?
That you are inherently worthy. Like there is nothing you have to do to prove and like claim it. You already deserve it. You were born it worthy. So you deserve health, you deserve wealth, you deserve happiness, love, and all the things. So, go explore, find it. You deserve it.
Beautifully stated. Where can our listeners learn more about you, the work that you do, and get a copy of your book?
Hey, awesome. So Instagram and LinkedIn are my biggest, but I'm also on Facebook, but my handle is the same on all of them, at Becca Powers 1313. Website has everything about me, including the book, and that's beccapowers.com.
Perfect. I want to thank you, Becca, so much for being here, for sharing your insights, your expertise, but also your story.
Thank you, Gia. It's so awesome to be here.
And of course, you can visit my website at gialacqua.com. Reach out on Instagram at gialacqua. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Want to thank you for joining us today. Remember, shift happens. If you feel called to something greater, trust the pull. We'll see you next time on What the Shift. All right, Shifter, that's a wrap on today's episode of What the Shift. But here's the thing. Awareness is just the first step. The real shift happens when you decide to do something with it. So before you go back to business as usual, ask yourself, what is one thing you are done carrying? What's one shift you're ready to make? And if this episode hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and send it to a woman who needs to hear this, because we shift together. Remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to take the next step. And I'll be right here next week, ready to shift with you. This is What the Shift, and we are just getting started.